Welcome to Tokyo Wave, recorded in a live studio in Harajuku, Japan, with your hosts Aaron and Parker. Alright everyone, welcome to episode 71 of Tokyo Wave. We're your hosts Aaron Randall
and Parker Allen. On Tokyo Wave, we bring you weekly updates from our studio in Harajuku.
Join us in segments featuring this week's top news,
political happenings,
business,
and other random garbage.
To get us started, here are this week's top news highlights.
5-year jail term finalized for 90-year-old blamed for fatal Tokyo car crash.
Japan household assets hit record high as cash and stock prices rise.
70 grams of matsutake mushrooms fetch $7,600 in first auction of season at West Japan Market.
This week in Japan. Alright, our first story. 5-year jail term finalized for 90-year-old blamed for fatal Tokyo car crash.
Kyodo News has reported that a 5-year prison term was finalized on September 17th for a 90-year-old former top bureaucrat over a fatal 2019 Tokyo car accident, bringing a close to a high-profile case that stirred debate about the place of elderly drivers on Japan's roads.
Neither the defense counsel of Kozu Izuka, a former chief of the now defunct Agency of Industrial Science and Technology, nor prosecutors appealed the September 2nd ruling by the Tokyo District Court by the deadline.
The court ruled that Izuka ran a red light after mistaking the gas pedal for the brake, hitting and killing Mana Matsunaga, 31 years old, and her 3-year-old daughter Riko, who were cycling through a crosswalk in Tokyo's Ikebukuro area on April 19, 2019. 9 others were also injured in the accident.
Wow, it was April 2019. I remember hearing about this. I can't believe how much time has passed.
This was top news, and it was terrifying because, this could have happened anywhere.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Izuka, accused of negligent driving resulting in death and injury, said, "I am sorry for the bereaved families. I would like to accept the verdict." When he met the chief of a non-profit organization supporting the families of convicts or alleged offenders.
Prosecutors will now study whether Izuka, who is unable to walk on his own and uses a wheelchair, will spend time behind bars, considering his age and health.
Japan's criminal procedure law allows punishment to be suspended for convicts aged 70 and over, as well as for those facing a risk of significantly harming their health or losing their lives.
Izuka had pleaded not guilty to the charge leveled against him, maintaining that a mechanical issue with the vehicle caused him to lose control.
However, the court determined that he kept the gas pedal depressed for about 10 seconds by mistaking it for the brake, causing the car to accelerate to a speed of up to 96 kilometers per hour. He was found responsible for the fatal crash.
The court also found a 5-year prison term suitable for Izuka, even taking his age into consideration.
The incident stirred debate on how to prevent accidents involving elderly drivers in rapidly graying Japan and prompted many drivers of advancing age to give up their licenses.
This is just going to become a bigger and bigger problem as Japan's aging society shows no signs of slowing down, and a lot of the people who use cars, especially in Tokyo, are very old.
Oh yeah. I mean, look at the taxi drivers.
Oh, and the taxi drivers, I mean, I'm sure you've had some pretty bad experiences, but more and more, I think people are also seeing the taxi profession as sort of a post-retirement job.
Right, which is really bizarre.
And I wish they would pick another job, because taxis are really good when they're driven by professionals.
Yeah.
Not by people who are just looking for something to do.
Oh yeah. If you go to another country, like in London, like all the taxi drivers are young and they're really good at driving. I
really think it has to do with the laws and the rules, and I think it's it must be too easy to obtain the license necessary to become a taxi driver. I don't know how hard it is, but it's not hard enough.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, honestly, I want to make a course for the taxi driver lesson that you have to get in order to become a taxi driver in Tokyo. You've got to start in front of our office here in Harajuku, and you've got to go around every single back road in Omotesando, and you have 30 seconds.
Oh my God. You know, taking a taxi here sometimes, they're terrified to take a right down the street.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's going to be the final turn, right?
Yeah, a lot of them will be like, can I drop you off right here before they have to take the right? Because it gets so narrow, you know? These narrow streets, I mean, living in Japan, people know that there's certain roundabouts where there's huge amounts of people and very confined space. And, you know, when that light goes green, the cars speed through. So yeah, like an incident like this is kind of like a nightmare situation. Like when you're examining these, you know, roundabouts and crossways, you think, gosh, I hope someone doesn't speed through here.
Well, I'm not going to give this elderly driver a pass. In fact, I think that this is a very important verdict for Japan. And I really hope that other elderly drivers will see this and say, I'm in advanced age. I don't want to spend the rest of my life in jail. You know, I will either give back my license or be more careful when I'm driving. I mean, this was, you know, a situation where I'm sure he was going to do something very important, but this guy obviously shouldn't have been behind the wheel of a car. I mean, he's a retired bureaucrat, a senior bureaucrat. I'm sure, you know, he could most certainly afford to take a taxi. So that he could also be aggravated by Tokyo's crappy, also retired taxi drivers. And they could just be, you know, angry at each other, and they'd be like elderly people in every other country around the world. You're too old to drive. No, you're too old to drive. And then somebody could put videos of that on YouTube, and all of the millennials, including us, would have something to watch.
You know what's it called when they speed really fast and then brake really quickly, speed and then brake really quickly?
It's called they suck at driving. That's what it's called.
So many taxis I've been in, man, have just like been like that. And if they get on the highway driving like that, holy crap. Like sometimes I'll roll the window down because I'm like, man, if this car goes over the bridge, I want to make sure I can swim out. I did that the other day, dude. You know,
what are you, Tom Cruise?
I'm already prepared.
Stop, drop, and roll, and that doesn't work on the water, dude.
Yeah, just based off of the way they're driving, you know.
Up next, Japan household assets hit record high as cash and stock prices rise.
Kyoto News has also reported that according to a new Bank of Japan data, Japanese households held a record 1,992 trillion yen, that's $18 trillion, worth of assets at the end of June, up 6.3% from a year earlier, as the coronavirus pandemic continued to curb spending and stock prices gained.
Tokyo Wave is currently looking for people who are willing to share.
We have an OnlyFans now.
Gross. So cash and deposits rose 4% to 1,072 trillion yen, a fresh record high, partly because of summer bonus payments.
Assets held in securities jumped 30% to 210 trillion yen, as progress in vaccinations fed hopes for recovery in major economies and boosted stock prices.
During this past quarter, Japan had some of the worst COVID-19 numbers in terms of infections it's had thus far, and Japanese consumers were thus asked to refrain from going out, and as a result, dining out and consumption remained sluggish.
Loans extended by financial institutions to non-financial firms increased 0.4% to 305 trillion yen.
The pace of year-on-year growth slowed from 7.6% at the end of March, potentially suggesting that companies have enough funds on hand.
To help financially struggling firms cope with the hit from the coronavirus pandemic, the BOJ and the government have ensured that such companies have access to necessary funds.
The Bank of Japan data also showed that cash and deposits held by non-financial firms increased 4.6% to 316 trillion yen, accounting for about a quarter of total assets worth 1,226 trillion yen, which is up 8.4%.
With the Bank of Japan maintaining its asset buying program to keep borrowing costs low for companies and consumers, the central bank's holdings of Japanese government bonds rose 3.7% to 540 trillion yen.
The Bank of Japan owns 44.1% of Japan's 1,224 trillion yen in government debt. That's a lot of JGBs. On the other hand, overseas investors held 162 trillion yen, which is up 7.9%, which accounts for 13.2% of the jijibus in existence.
So, I mean, looking at this, is it fair to say that even without government support, a lot of Japanese firms and households actually have money on hand?
Apparently.
I mean, because this is not the story I'm hearing from like a lot of Japanese friends and colleagues. So,
you know, it's kind of funny. I think in the United States, we have a jargon term, stealth wealth, that refers to wealthy people who aren't really outwardly broadcasting the fact that they are well off.
Right.
And Japan might as well be the capital of stealth wealth because we don't really have that culture of going to friends' houses and really having those sort of interactions in people's private space where you can quickly determine, you know, whether somebody is a high roller or just a roller.
You know, just a quick story on that, if it's okay. I used to work at a university doing research here in Tokyo. And someone on the team, an older Japanese fellow, very nice guy, his family was the first Japanese family to go to Harvard, like his great grandmother or something. And then one night we went to a park and he's like, oh yeah, this is my family's park. It was like a gigantic park in the middle of Tokyo. And then we looked at this building and he's like, oh yeah, that's my family's building. And I'm like, so you own this gigantic park, you own that building, you're like the first Japanese family to ever go to Harvard. Why are you working on this team at this university? You know, but you know, it's just another example of the kind of stealth wealth. You know, it's strong here in Japan.
That individual was less stealth.
We were drunk, so I think he was like divulging information. You know, and we were asking him more and more. As soon as we found, because the park was named after him, and as soon as we found that out, we're like, wait a second, if this park is named after you, there's got to be more going on. Like, what other stuff do you own? Like, you know.
Hails a taxi. He's like, get in. And he takes you to this airport hangar on like one side of Haneda Airport, and he's like, this is the family fleet of private jets.
Wouldn't be surprised. But you know, another comment on Japanese potentially having more money than expected. It does kind of make sense because people have not been able to go out, right? We see this in not all of American homes, but some homes in the West too have actually saved a lot of money over the pandemic. So,
or they spent it all on Amazon Prime.
Yeah, that's it.
In case you were wondering how we've spent the pandemic.
Yeah, Amazon.
You talked about how you like bought some like rack or something, just like.
Oh yeah, dude! I bought so much. I just put in another order yesterday for just a bunch of other things, like just everything that comes into my head now. I just put an order in on Amazon, like pillows and.
I've gotten to a point where like before I know it, I've got all of these cardboard boxes, and you know you can't just throw out cardboard boxes.
Dude, yeah, the cardboard box struggle is real. Like.
Yeah, oh my god.
Because they're so bad too. You can't keep those things in the house because bugs. Sometimes, dude, like, at these factories, I don't think they're all clean. This is really gross, but
And I hate to dunk on Amazon because I love the fast delivery, but those boxes, they don't fold flat. You have to like rip them open, and then you can't really flatten them easily.
No. They're like single use, like made to be destroyed boxes.
Not very sustainable.
Yeah, I was just about to say it's probably destroying the earth, you know.
Tokyo Wave, definitely not sponsored by Amazon Japan.
All right, and up next, 70 grams of matsutake mushrooms fetch $7,600 on first auction of season at West Japan Market.
The Mainichi has reported that 3 matsutake mushrooms weighing a total of 70 grams fetched 830,000 yen, which is about $7,600, in the first auction of the season at a local market in this West Japan city on September 16th.
The bidding price for the highly prized matsutake mushrooms, an autumn delicacy and Tamba Sasayama specialty measuring between 7 and 11 centimeters long, soared at the Tamba Sasayama Ichiba Market. The Tamba Sasayama Kinmata restaurant in the city won the auction.
7 to 11 centimeters long. That's a good length.
That's not what she said.
According to market head Toshiaki Iseki, the matsutake grown in Tamba Sasayama, where it's often foggy and temperatures drop significantly at night, give off a beautiful aroma. Perhaps due to a long spell of rain this summer, shipment of the mushrooms began 7 to 10 days earlier than in usual years.
The first auction of the season began at 7,000 yen, about $64, and the bidding price quickly rose while sales brokers watched over. The winning price can be converted into about 11.85 million yen, approximately $108,000 per kilogram, apparently a record high. The wholesale price during peak harvest time is usually between 50,000 yen, roughly $460, and 150,000 yen, about $1,400 per kilogram. Shipping will continue until around mid-November, though it depends on the weather.
Following the auction, Iseki said with a smile, "The flavor of autumn has started in Tamba."
Kingo Matsuo, chief manager of successful bidder Kinmata, commented, "These mushrooms are top quality with an excellent aroma. Though the circumstances are harsh amid the coronavirus pandemic, we hope to invigorate Tamba Sasayama's fall." He said that the mushrooms will be served for his inn's guests and others.
7 to 11 centimeters. That's a good size.
That's definitely not what she said, and yeah, you know, for this kind of product, I would have to agree.
$8,000 for a mushroom. Wow.
I gotta admit though, I love these mushrooms.
Yeah, and usually they're even the cheap ones that you can find at the supermarket. They're like $50 to $100, right?
Yeah. So there's some certain like organic like supermarkets that have like super, pretty expensive mushrooms, but they're like so damn good, man. Put that in an omelet, and it's game over.
Can you imagine like an $8,000 omelet?
Yeah, man.
I can just imagine like Yusaku Maesawa and Bill Gates and Jeff Bezos just being like, next.
Yeah.
And they've just got like Cristal champagne and like solo cups.
Oh my god. But no, the Japanese mushroom craze is real. I mean, it's really good stuff. I had a friend who researches mushrooms. He's currently in Australia, but he's got a PhD in microbiology and specializes in mushrooms. And he was in scuba for 1 year, but he was like living in the forest here, looking for like strange mushrooms and whatnot. So,
you know, it's interesting with these matsutake mushrooms, especially given how expensive they can become, because you really have to go into the wilderness to find them. And sometimes that inadvertently runs into the situation where these mushroom pickers are trespassing on private property.
Ooh. Wow. It's kind of like the gold rush almost, you know?
With mushrooms.
Yeah. That's what we gotta do. Buy lots of land and grow a bunch of these rare mushrooms.
And guard it with shotguns.
Yeah.
Welcome to the Tokyo Wave Mushroom Forest, fortified with the finest mushrooms this side of the Kanto Plain. Trespassers will be shot. Rednecks will be shot again. 7 to 11 centimeters. That's how long the shells are.
I mean, hell, looking at these numbers, man, it looks like a good business, to get into for any aspiring farmers out there.
Or aspiring trespassers.
That too.
They're not like cat burglars, they're mushroom burglars.
Yeah. Wasn't there was like a bunch of Vietnamese that were stealing like different kind of produce?
Produce, yeah, we did that a few months ago.
Yeah. This sounds like something that like would attract lots of different kinds of thievery.
Those evil foreigners in their mushroom thieving ways. You catch them red-handed in the forest with a ruler. It's like they've got like 7 and 11 marked in red. That's how you know they're trying to steal your shrooms.
My buddy who does the mushroom research, he travels internationally with mushrooms, and he always gets like taken to the white room.
Oh man,
100 questions, because obviously there's the issue of are these mushrooms what is it?
Oh yeah, are they what's that psychobibelin psychedelic mushrooms? Yeah.
So there's the issue of them thinking that the mushrooms might be psychedelic, but then the other issue is are these?
Nah, man, they're just delicious. Like, we're gonna have to do a cavity search.
Yeah, or the issue of they might be stolen. Like someone might have snuck in here to Japan or somewhere else, stole a bunch of extremely expensive mushrooms, and is trying to bring them somewhere else to sell.
Stolen away into the night.
Yeah, bro, these mushrooms get you high, and they're fucking expensive as shit. What do you mean I can't bring them on the plane?
You just put them in a music instrument box and take off in a private jet. Works every time.
Bada bing, bada boom.
Forget about it.
All right, and up next on Japanese Politics Wow, we'll be talking about Japan's ruling party kicking off campaigning for leadership election. You're now listening to Tokyo Wave. Japanese politics. Wow.
So, all over the headlines right now, and honestly it will be until the election itself happens on September the 29th, is the ruling party, the Liberal Democratic Party, better known as the LDP, and its leadership election, which is coming up.
Kyoto News recently reported that campaigning for the Japanese ruling party's leadership election to choose the successor to Prime Minister Yoshihide Suga officially started on September 17th, with 4 veteran lawmakers, 2 men and 2 women, throwing their hats into the ring.
First and foremost, it really is historic that an LDP election is going to have 50% men and women candidates. And, before we get started, this is really Japanese history in the making.
For sure.
There aren't any young people, but hey, you got to start somewhere.
Yeah.
So the LDP presidential election is currently being contested by former Foreign Minister Fumio Kishida, former Communications Minister Sanae Takaichi, current Vaccination Minister Taro Kono, and Executive Acting Secretary General of the LDP Seiko Noda, with none having a surefire path to victory.
The LDP is choosing its new president, who will become prime minister as the party controls the House of Representatives, the powerful lower chamber of parliament, after Suga earlier this month announced his resignation as public support for his government hit new lows due to dissatisfaction with the COVID-19 response.
So the LDP presidential election officially kicked off on September 17th, with the 4 candidates delivering policy speeches before holding a joint press conference.
Kono, a reform-minded maverick in the Conservative Party, who in the past has ruffled feathers by opposing nuclear energy and abandoning a costly missile defense system, was viewed as the early frontrunner.
Just to talk about Kono for a second, everybody calls him a maverick, but what does that mean?
Mm-mm-mm.
And so I think it's important to sort of go back and look at these things in terms of how they fit into the larger LDP equation. So, of course, as the article says, the LDP is a conservative party, but at the same time, as this massive political party, which has, as of present, 383 sitting Diet members, you're going to have a lot of different ideas and ideologies within the same party.
Mm-hmm.
And so in terms of the greater LDP, Kono can be seen as someone who is really on the liberal side of the Liberal Democratic Party, really sort of bringing in ideas that traditionally the LDP ticket eschews. And those issues can include the acceptance of potentially allowing females in Japanese imperial succession, also this anti-nuclear stance. And in addition to that, perhaps most interesting for observers from overseas, Kono is also now in support of gay marriage, which I have never heard an LDP politician publicly announce.
Yeah, I think this is a good time to maybe clarify. And a question to you, Parker. A lot of my friends, when I say the word LDP, Liberal Democratic Party, and also due to Abe's administration having this very foreign-facing, come to Japan attitude, they believe that the LDP is an extremely liberal party, but that's not the case traditionally, correct? It's a very conservative party.
Liberal in name only.
Right. Yeah. Just to clarify, because I think a lot of people get confused with that too. Junior lawmakers with more vulnerable seats are especially drawn to the 58-year-old Kono, who tops opinion polls on who should succeed Suga as prime minister, as they are seeking to install a popular leader ahead of a general election this fall.
Most of the LDP's major factions are going to allow members to vote freely, unlike in past presidential elections where faction bosses such as Deputy Prime Minister and Finance Minister Taro Aso and LDP Secretary General Toshihiro Nikai, currently the LDP's number 2 in command, dictated how votes should be cast among members of their respective factions.
Kono also got a boost from winning the backing of Shigeru Ishiba, a popular former defense minister who decided to sit out the race.
Kishida, another strong contender, is expected to gather support from veteran lawmakers who are uncomfortable with Kono's reformist streak.
The 64-year-old also has the advantage of being able to count on votes from his own faction, which has 47 members.
Both Takaichi and Noda are aiming to become Japan's first female prime minister, an achievement that would both be historic and long overdue in Japan, of course, a country that places lowest among the group of 7 nations in the World Economic Forum's gender gap rankings. The gender gap, it's pretty big.
Yeah. Honestly, man, I really wish it would be a female prime minister just to shake things up, because the first year could you just imagine like the craziness like inside the Diet, like the weird things that are going to be said. But I think Japan needs to get that out of its system,
Well, and what would be great about having Japan's first female prime minister is, apart from the vaccination rate, we could also beat the ass of the United States.
Yeah, true that.
Which has never had a female president.
Right. Good call. If I had to bet, I'd probably put my money on Kono, but it would just be really awesome to see a female prime minister.
So let's talk a bit how this LDP leadership election works.
To run in the LDP leadership race, hopefuls are required to garner at least 20 nominations from among the LDP's Diet members.
Following campaigning, the election will be held with the LDP Diet members as well as rank-and-file LDP members, of which there are almost 1 million, casting ballots, and whoever secures a majority of votes will be declared the winner. If no candidate secures an outright majority in the first round, as in over 50% of the 766 total votes, a runoff between the top two contenders will be held.
In the first round, each of the LDP's 383 Diet members will cast a vote, and another 383 votes will be determined based on the preferences of rank and file members who are at least 20 years of age, hold Japanese nationality, and have paid membership fees in the previous 2 years in principle.
Okay.
You didn't pay your fees, but it was only 1,000 yen, $10. Doesn't matter. You don't get to vote.
So the late entry of 61-year-old Noda, who announced her bid on September 16th, has raised the chances of an indecisive first round, which will make it harder to predict who the eventual victor will be.
The 60-year-old Takaichi, part of the LDP's right-leaning cohort and closely allied with former Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, has vowed to continue making regular visits to the war-linked Yasukuni Shrine, a move sure to strain relations with China and South Korea that both see the site of worship as a symbol of Japan's past militarism. Why do they still go to this shrine, man?
Well, we might lose some listeners over this, but I have conflicted opinions about the Yasukuni Shrine situation and how it's seen, of course, as this terrible thing that Japanese politicians do. Because you don't see Vietnamese people, standing up in protest when U.S. presidents visit the Vietnam War Memorial. Was it a good thing that the United States invaded Vietnam?
That's a good analogy for sure.
I mean, of course, the big point about Yasukuni Shrine that really gets people riled up is that, not of course immediately, but I think it was in the 1970s, under a cover of secrecy, the priesthood of Yasukuni Shrine basically introduced to the official sort of roster of those interred. And Yasukuni Shrine is a shrine that commemorates those who died in service of Japan, i.e. People who served in the Japanese military. So what happened regarding Yasukuni Shrine that made it become so controversial is an interesting footnote in Japan's post-war history. The rabbit hole begins in 1959, when the Health and Welfare Ministry began forwarding information on Class B and Class C war criminals, i.e. those not involved in the planning, preparation, initiation, or waging of the war, to Yasukuni Shrine. Subsequently, these individuals were gradually enshrined between 1959 and 1967, often without permission from surviving family members. Information on the 14 most prominent Class A war criminals, which included the prime ministers and top generals from the war era, was forwarded to the shrine in 1966, and the shrine passed a resolution to enshrine these individuals in 1970. The actual timing for their enshrinement was left to the discretion of head priest Fujimaro Tsukuba, who delayed the enshrinement through to his death in March 1978. His successor, Nagayoshi Matsudaira, who rejected the Tokyo War Crimes Tribunal's verdicts, enshrined the Class A war criminals in a secret ceremony in 1978. And so, as a result of that, Emperor Hirohito, who visited the shrine as recently as 1975, was privately displeased with the action and subsequently refused to visit the shrine. The details of this enshrinement of war criminals eventually became public in 1979, but there was minimal controversy about the issue for several years. However, in recent years, that situation has changed dramatically, as of course, whenever you see the word Yasukuni in a global news outlet's article, it generally references some sort of anger generated particularly by the government of South Korea and the People's Republic of China.
Yeah. That's why I asked that question without digging. For those of us who don't know the history, all we see is on the TV. They've, different politicians will visit the shrine, and it pisses off all the neighboring countries here, right? So the big question is like, why do you guys keep visiting it? I guess the answer is it's complicated.
One, I think there's really two sides to the coin, and obviously, whether this is okay or not is really a question of, where you stand on history. And at the same time, though, if you look at wars around the world, war is controversial.
Yeah,
and each country who is engaged in a war, more often than not, has committed what could be considered war crimes. I mean, even most recently, the United States conflict in Afghanistan,
and Guantanamo.
Nobody is using the word war crimes, but some bad stuff happened in Afghanistan. And I don't know if they're going to make an Afghanistan memorial now that the U.S. has ended the war, using the most uncontroversial wording I can think of. But perhaps the Taliban government might not like the memorial they create. I don't know.
Yeah. The only reason I ask this, Parker, is there's so many shrines in Japan, right? And this one specifically just causes so much controversy. It's always just been a question I've never really dug into. Why does this cause so much controversy? So
personally, and of course, you're free to hate me for my personal opinion, I do understand and appreciate these Japanese politicians who visit the shrine. Of course, a lot of people criticize their actions, both for who's enshrined there and also the foreign policy implications of committing this act.
Right.
But as long as we see politicians and prime ministers and presidents from democratic nations of the world visiting war memorials, it's hard for me to, say, God damn it, y'all can't be visiting that shrine to enshrine the war dead. It reminds me of that history is written by the victors sort of mentality.
Right. Well, circling back to the elections, Parker, what are your thoughts? So we got these 4 candidates.
And really, we only have 2.
Oh, okay.
And so other observers say that we only have 1 and everyone else is Sakura. But I really do think Takaichi is going to run a tough race. I don't know if she will make it to the runoff or not, but I definitely see her getting the second position. Unless Kishida is able to drum up support more demonstrably in the next week, basically. And so obviously, this is an election that happens on September the 29th, but people make up their minds before September the 29th. So a lot of those machinations and what actually happens, we only get to see a small part of it, but it does continue to interest me that Takaichi is really the candidate who former Prime Minister Shinzo Abe is strongly supporting. And already we're seeing tabloid articles come out saying that Abe is really gunning for her support. However, Kono continues to be the more popular candidate just because he's got this great public persona. He's got over 1 million Twitter followers. He's fluent in English and already a fixture on the world stage, having been both foreign minister and defense minister, and of course now in charge of the COVID-19 rollout. And honestly, until Suga decided not to run in this election, everyone was already starting to look at Kono, and the only strike against him was that, of course, being the minister in charge of the COVID-19 rollout, especially this whole controversy around the vaccine, one would imagine that he wouldn't be very popular. But for whatever reason, and, magical electorate public opinion land, the prime minister, of course, took all of the hits from the public, and Kono comes away smelling like a rose. It's quite interesting, but that is the reality that we're currently facing. Whereas, of course, as a former communications minister, Ms. Takaichi, of course, has been on the national stage, but nowhere near the same magnitude as Kono. So when you're looking for a candidate who really is, ready to jump into the breach and deal with all of the issues that Japan is currently facing, of course, Kono it's hard to say that he isn't the strongest candidate, but the question will be, do the LDP members, of course, who, being LDP members, tend to be quite conservative, are they going to agree with Kono's more liberal, more reformist ideas and policy proposals?
Right. You know what Japan is missing are the debates that we have in the U.S. Those are so great.
Yeah, it's they should yell at each other more,
Exactly. Because the debates in America aren't for debating. They're just how can I roast the other guy or gal better, but yeah, it works differently here. So, but that's just a wish I had.
I hate to say it, but I second that. And really the thing that I wish I saw the most that we absolutely do not have in Japan are campaign attack ads.
Oh, yeah.
Those are the most sinister. Oh, my God.
Yeah. It could be very hilarious, too.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
This candidate likes to do all of the things that you hate. Vote for me.
You don't want to get cancer, do you? Then don't vote for this guy.
This video is supported by the National Rifle Association.
All right. So it's going to be an exciting month, though, for politics here in Japan. Leadership change is coming up soon. So that should change a lot of other stuff, too. We've got high inoculation rate with the vaccines now, finally in Japan. There's talk of relaxation of different travel restrictions as early as, November. So, we could see a lot of big change before the end of the year.
I am really excited to see the result of this election, and let's hope we have a successful new prime minister.
Absolutely. Hey, listeners, that's right. You listener right there.
Who do you think should be our next guest on Tokyo Wave? Let us know. Drop us a line at wave@tokyowave.jp.
We hope you enjoyed Tokyo Wave.
If you haven't already, you can subscribe to our podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, and YouTube.
Join us again next week on Tokyo Wave.